Day 22 of the electrification of the 1968 Toyota Stout for Cellar Dairy. Things are pretty much ready to do a final check over this morning before we turn things on. We've got to go over it with a fine-tooth comb this morning, make sure I didn't have any late night mistakes yesterday. So first of all, we'll do a once over of the wiring, make sure it all looks right. Then we're going to do our smoke test. We don't want any smoke. And then hopefully we'll do a power up with the controller and hopefully see the wheels turning. I haven't done any of this stuff yet. This isn't scripted. I hope all that works. Yeah, and probably, as I mentioned, the batteries will be in a partial state of charge. Usually about 40 to 50% is the shipping specification, I think. They want to have them as low energy as possible in case anything happens. Then the fire and brimstone is a little less serious, but the battery doesn't deplete itself over time. So expecting 40 to 50% in them, which should be okay for a bit of testing, but I don't actually have an easy way to charge them at the moment without the charger that is on the slip-on. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Let's start with a look over the wiring. I reckon we get into that right now, and then hopefully smoke test and get those wheels turning. Rightio. So. Righto, let's look over this. So, we got motor cables. They're both tightened up. DC to DC converter output, pull test, yep, that's okay. What do we got here? This is the enable line to the DC to DC converter. That's unplugged for the moment. That's probably good for our smoke test. We'll just start up the batteries to begin with. We've connected our inputs together so that all the fuses are on initially. Anyway, there'll be circuit diagrams and stuff in the description. Let's go and have a look in the cab. Now this is a little bit more to look over this. Now I've got our Venus GX just hanging here for the moment. I haven't mounted it yet. We've got the BMU on the left. It is mounted. I'm going to do this separately and go over everything carefully, but I'm not going to try and explain it all just now. It's probably better if you look over the circuit diagram. We've just got temporarily mocked up the two BYD flex modules. We've got the comms cable here and we've got them wired in parallel and hooked into this fuse, 160 amp fuse. These batteries can handle 140 amps continuous and 210 amps peak for 5 seconds. I want to turn these batteries on. I want to see what state of charge they're in. And we're just going to press and hold this for 3 seconds. Right, heard the click of the relays coming on. Let's go back and have a look in the cab. Oh, look at that. I can see the back of the battery monitor glowing. I can tell it's on. It's on. Ah, look at this. 52.6 volts. Beautiful. We should now be able to turn this breaker key. Things are on, so we should be able to turn the key and hopefully the contactor will come on. Beautiful, look at that. And when the key's off, it's off. Let's try that once more. Key's in the on position. Holy moly. Contactor's engaged. Now we can test the accelerator, see whether this motor controller does anything. Righto, we'll see whether this motor controller turns anything. Whoa. Did that just... I think it might have dropped the contact. Whoa. That wasn't good. Okay, well I think we just tripped the batteries, so I would say that motor controller went full bore instead of the other way around. Well, what are we gonna do? We've just been doing the final check over of the wiring and we passed the smoke test. Nothing burnt out when we turned everything on. We did have a couple of things, a bad relay and a few wires that we had to move so that all the monitoring stays on, regardless of whether things are on or off. That's all working now. We fired it up, we touched the accelerator pedal, and I heard the motor starting to move, and I think the contactor dropped out. And I took my hand off the accelerator pedal, and there was a big arc. So I think I've turned down the total current limit on the board, and the accelerator ramp time made it more gentle. So we'll see now whether it behaves better when I turn it back on. Take two, let's turn these up. They're already on. Okay. Maybe they didn't, interesting. They are on. Okay, so I've just checked in the BYD software, and will pop up on the screen. I took a little screenshot. There's definitely, the BMS has logged a short circuit event, so I suspect that's it drawing too much current. It sees that as a short circuit. I can see the battery and connect to it, but it's not putting out any voltage. So I just have to find out how to get it, reset it, and hopefully now we've turned down the current, put the current limiter on the motor controller. Hopefully it won't be quite so aggressive, and hopefully the acceleration ramp time, making that longer, will help too. So let's just work out how to reset the battery and have another go. So I'm just running the Victron, the BYD B-Connect Plus software, hoping to reset the short current event that's stopping us from restarting the battery. Just updating to the latest firmware for the BYD BMU and BMS, which we did via the app on the phone, but anyway, doing it again, hoping to see whether we can reset this short circuit alarm. Don't actually know how to do that yet. The BMU will start updating the BMS. Could take a little while. I think we should get a solar charge controller hooked up to see whether we can get some energy into these batteries. Here's our solar charge controller. It's brand new in the packet. Right, I've got a couple of MC4 connector ends here. So we've just wired up this big long extension cable that we've grabbed off an old shipping container. That's a thick enough lead, so that'll run from some solar panels out here into the solar charge controller. Just wired up this little charge controller, and that's hooked into the batteries, so we can now get some panels hooked up, but we should first have the batteries turned on. So, because they're off at the sec, they were doing their firmware update, but just make sure they're happy. Just got some spare solar panels on the back of the shed here, so we'll grab them and lay them out on the tray of the diner. Right, I've got our little temporary solar array with a bit of a cover over it for the moment. We're getting 86 volts open circuit at the moment, so that's okay for us to hook up. Our controller can only take 100 volts maximum, so I think we're good to go to hook up, but I want the batteries on and the charge controller on before we put the panels on. But the batteries aren't coming on, so let's go and have a look at them again. Lots of fun, back and forward, updating firmware, turning on and off. Riveting. I'm sure you guys really want to be watching this. Anyway, I think this is probably part of EV conversion. It's firmware stuff. Instead of fiddling with carburetors, you're fiddling with firmware. It's all swings and roundabouts. Okay, I think we've finally got some light shed on the problem. The software from the supplier, Alps Power, was not up to date. I called them up, they were really helpful, but Alps, really, make sure the software's up to date on your site, guys. Anyway, so the iOS app was up to date. That's the one I initially configured things with, but the desktop version wasn't, so it was probably trying to work with, it looks like it was updating the wrong firmware, or I've got a little bit more hope now. Hopefully this firmware update will work, and hopefully the battery will restart. See these error messages? I reckon they're errors because I reckon the version 1.x software loaded firmware for the HVM, which is a high voltage battery, and it's got different hardware in it, which is pretty crazy. Righto, so it's always hard to do video when things aren't going so well. I've been on the phone a bunch with Alps Power, and Jay from Alps Power has been fantastic running through this, so thanks very much, Alps Power. Even though you might have had the wrong version of software on your website, you should fix that up, but really appreciate your help, Jay. So Jay's sent through something that I need to upload to recover the battery, because it did have a wrong firmware uploaded to it by the old version of the software that didn't know about these newer battery modules. Going to go ahead and install that specialty firmware to recover from this unique situation that they have on hand. Sounds like it has happened before. We're going to get into that specialty firmware update, and we'll be back with you soon, hopefully with a thumbs up. It's day 23, and we've had some drama last night. All planned, I assure you. So, what happened was we were just starting the motor controller up and to test the vehicle. Yeah, something caused the main contactor to drop out, and then I think it re-engaged and there was a bit of a spark. And so we checked the batteries, and the batteries had shut down with an overcurrent alarm. And as you know, we then spent, I showed a little bit, but we got a pretty deep rabbit hole last night with firmware. Spent hours updating firmware on the batteries. Ended up with the software off the BYD importer's website installing the wrong firmware version because it was an old version of the program. Alps Power, really please update your website with the correct software. But the technical team at Alps Power were great and spent hours and hours last night until 10 PM last night on a Friday night. Talk about beyond the Call of Duty, impressed. Thank you very much. Fuses, 150 amp fuses have blown in the battery, in both the batteries. So that's 300 amps in parallel? Really? Seems odd, given it was behind a 160 amp fuse, but anyway. And diodes blown, not visibly, no damage visibly, but diodes short circuit on the BMS, so inside the batteries. So Tan from Alps Power has ordered replacement parts, and I believe he's going to come up and replace them. Yeah, I don't know how long that'll be. So we're going to try and continue testing with a different battery pack that I've got. I've got a battery pack out of a Mitsubishi plug-in hybrid electric Outlander vehicle that I bought all the gear off Gus, all the electric motor controllers, inverter and battery pack and everything off Gus from that vehicle. That's actually for a future project for the hybrid electric vehicle we're going to do next after this project. It's going to be a unique type of hybrid electric. I believe it's never been done before. You see whether you can guess. So pretty excited about that project, but right now we're here. We're converting a 68 Toyota Stout. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. And to get ourselves back on the testing road, I think I can give you guys a quick look at what happened with the BYD batteries, and I'll do that in a sec. But really, I'm going to get out this Mitsubishi pack and plug it into the solid charge controller that we had hooked up yesterday, getting ready to charge the BYD batteries. And it's all configurable, so we can adjust it to the right voltages, so we can get the Mitsubishi pack charging for testing. It's only a little baby. It's only 40 amp hour, 16S, but it can handle 6C for short periods. So that's 6 4 is 24, 240 amp hours, 240 amps for short periods. We're really just going to use it for testing to get the wheels rolling, and we want to pull limited currents from it. So hopefully get it up to a good voltage, maybe 4 volts per cell, and then we will plug it in and see whether we can, again through the fuses, whether we can get the motor controller to behave and spin the wheels up and ramp and do everything. So, and yeah, I'll give you guys a quick look at the BYD battery and point out which bits went, and then we're going to get out this PHEV battery. Okay, these are the flex modules here with the top panel open, which really is probably reserved for servicing by authorized service technicians. but thanks very much, Tan, for running us through and not holding us for any longer. So we know now that that fuse just there, 150 amp fuse, is open circuit. I've checked that, the multimeter. And over on the other side here on this board, there's some diodes down just in there that have gone. Alps Power, the Australian importer for BYD, have acknowledged that it's an issue on these early model Flexes. They're going to come and replace the fuse and the BMS board. Once again, thanks Tan for all your support last night. You're a legend. Much appreciated, Alps Power, for your technical team going above and beyond. But right now, we're going to go and get a different battery pack hooked up so we can continue testing. Righto, okay, let's get this linked together. So this is 16 cells, or actually it's two banks of 8 cells. So that this is only one of 5 modules that's in the car. So 16 cells in series, 40 amp hour cells, nothing in parallel. 4.2 volts is the maximum charging voltage for this chemistry, but we're not going to charge to that. We're not going to charge anywhere near that. 4.05 volts, I believe, is probably what it was charged to in the car from memory. I reckon if we just charge to 4, we'll get our little solar charge controller hooked up. We're talking about 60 volts at the moment. This is the negative down here. There is a fuse in this charge controller, but we do not want to short circuit this battery because this is the fire prone chemistry and there is no breaker. So we now have a little blue light on our solar charge controller, our little MPPT here, and we are going to I'm looking around for my phone. We're recording this on the phone, so I'm going to use the phone to log into this, so I'll catch you guys in a sec. There we have it, 2 Trina 450 watt panels hooked up to our solar charge controller, putting in about 800 watts. Pretty happy with that. We'll let that battery come up a bit, so we're heading up to just over 4 volts per cell, a little bit under 4.05, going to 64.4 volts max charge voltage on the charge controller, so we'll let that come up a bit. So, a bit of a change of plans. We were thinking about having another go at getting it rolling, turning the motor today with Mitsubishi PHEV Outlander battery pack. We've charged that up now and that's good to go, but we got word from the EV group that we're going to have some support coming in tomorrow, so very much looking forward to that. Gus is on his way back and Adrian's coming back, so we're trying to get the cab as prepared as possible for these guys to come tomorrow. I'm going to put some plates across there, just preparing a little bit of steel here, and yeah, I want to get that welded in.